Welcome to Mrs. V's Reading Corner, where you can enjoy books for educational, fun, or even bedtime stories. Please take the time to like this video, comment below with how you enjoyed it, book suggestions, and more. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get all the new books that I post first. Lewis and Clark and Me, A Dog's Tale by Laurie Myers, illustrated by Michael Dooley. The year is 1803. Lewis and Clark are planning their expedition to explore the territory west of the Mississippi River. Lewis is looking for a dog to accompany the expedition, and as the story opens, he meets a 150-pound Newfoundland dog named Seaman, who goes on a tale of their adventures. Seaman! I glanced at the man beside me. Look alive! Here's Byers. Something caught my attention beyond him. Down the wharf, a group of men, but I saw only one. It was Lewis. He was a full head taller than the other men I had known on the docks. And he was dressed in a different way. White breeches and a short blue coat with buttons that shone in the sun. A tall pointed hat with a feather made him look even taller. Lewis walked along the dock with a large stride. There was a purpose about him. My life on the wharf was good, but I was a young dog and yearned for more. At the time, I didn't know exactly what. I sensed that this man was part of what I wanted. I sat straighter as he approached. The man who owned me stood straighter too. Lewis slowed. Need a dog, sir? My man asked. I'm looking, Lewis replied. He stooped down and looked me right in the eye. I wagged my tail and stepped forward. I wanted to sniff this strange man. He extended his hand for me. He didn't smell like any I had ever smelled, and it made me want to sniff him all over. Lewis scratched the back of my neck where I like to be scratched. I'm headed out west, up the Missouri River, Lewis said. My man's face brightened. This dog be perfect, sir. These dogs can swim. Newfoundlands, they call them. Rescue a drowning man in rough water or in a storm. Look at these paws. You won't find another dog with paws like that. They's webbed. He spread my toes to show the webbing. So they are, Lewis replied. Lewis began feeling my chest and hindquarters. His hands were large and muscular. Water rolls off this coat, the man added. He pulled up a handful of my thick, dense double coat. Lewis examined my coat and nodded. I know the Mississippi, sir, but I don't know the Missouri, my man said. It's off the Mississippi, headed northwest. North, you say? Ah, it'll be cold up that river. Won't bother this one, though. He patted me firmly on the back. Lewis stood and looked around. He found a piece of wood that had broken off a crate. He showed it to me, then he threw it. Go, he said. I wanted to go. I wanted to do whatever this man asked, but I belonged to another. I looked at my man. Go on, he said. I ran for the stick and returned it to Lewis. How much? Lewis asked. $20, and a bargain at that. Lewis looked down at me. I lifted my head proudly. Won't find a better dog than this. Perfect for your trip, my man said, trying to convince Lewis. It wasn't necessary. Lewis wanted me, I could tell. He had liked me the moment he saw me. The feeling was mutual. Lewis paid the man $20. Does he have a name? Lewis asked. I've been calling him Seaman, but you can name him anything you like. Come, Seaman, Lewis called. As we walked away, my rope in his hand, he put his other hand on my head. After that, he didn't need a rope. I would follow this man to the ends of the earth. The dog was of the Newfoundland breed, one that I priced much for his docility and qualifications, generally for my journey. Meriwether Lewis, November 16, 1803. Squirrels. I caught fish off the docks. I chased animals in the woods, but honey came alive for me on the river. The Ohio, Lewis called it. I have always loved the water, so the day we boarded the boat and pushed out onto the Ohio River was just about the happiest day of my life. Lewis was excited too. I could tell by the way he walked, and his voice was louder than usual. The men were also excited. I could hear it in their voices. They didn't complain when they loaded the boat. Lewis was telling them what to load and how to load it. Anyway, that afternoon, Lewis and I and some men started down the river. I rode in the back of the boat. It was the highest place and gave me the best view. From there, I could scan both banks and the water with just a glance. The first 2 weeks, I couldn't get enough of it. There were animals I had not seen before, smells I had not smelled. My skin tickled with excitement. The river was low and the men had to pole much of the way. When they weren't poling, they were digging channels for our boat or hiring oxen to pull the boat from the shore. We were only a couple of weeks down the river when I had my first great day of hunting. The river wasn't quite as shallow and the current not too strong, so the crew rowed along leisurely. I was lying on the back deck of the boat. I had just scanned the shore, nothing of interest, just a few beaver and a deer. I decided to close my eyes for a nap. I blinked a few times and was ready to lay my head on my paws when something on the water up ahead caught my eye. I stuck my nose in the air and sniffed. I recognized the scent immediately. Squirrel. A squirrel on water? That was unusual. I had seen plenty of squirrels, but I have never seen one swim. There was something else strange. The smell of squirrel was especially strong. I had never known one squirrel to project so powerful a scent. I stood to take a look. Right away, I spotted a squirrel off the starboard side. He was swimming across the river. Another squirrel followed close behind. Without a second thought, I leaned over the side of the boat to get a better look. I saw another squirrel, and another. I could not believe my eyes. Hundreds of squirrels were crossing the river. The water up ahead was almost black with them. Every muscle in my body tightened to full alert. Lewis was on the other side of the boat, talking to two of the men. I turned to him and barked. "What is it?" he asked. It is impossible to describe the urge I felt. It was as strong as anything I had ever known. I had to get those squirrels. I barked again. Lewis scanned the water ahead. "Look at that," he said to the men. "Squirrels crossing the river. Now why would they do that?" "Food," one of the men suggested. Lewis paused for a moment. "There are hickory nuts on both banks." "Migrating," suggested the other. Lewis nodded. They were wasting time wondering why the squirrels were crossing. It didn't matter. The squirrels were there, hundreds of them, right in front of us. Sometimes men spend too much time thinking. They miss the fun of life. "They'd make a fine supper," the first man suggested with a smile. Lewis nodded. He looked at me. "Let's see what you can do, Seaman." "Go ahead, fetch us a squirrel." That's what I was waiting for. I sprang off the boat and hit the water swimming. I was going to get every squirrel in that river for Louis. My webbed feet made it easy. I reached the first squirrel in just minutes. When it saw me, its eyes bulged with fear. It tried to steer its sleek, fat body away. In one swift move, I grabbed it by the neck and killed it. I carried it back to the boat. Louis leaned over the side and took it from me. Good dog, fetch another, he said. The crew had stopped rowing, and the boat drifted slowly towards the massive squirrels. Look at Captain Louis' dog, yelled one of the rowers. I turned and started swimming again. I could hear the men cheering me on. In 2 strokes, I was on another squirrel. Good dog, Louis yelled. Go! Go, the crew echoed. Go, Seaman, go! I went and went over and over. I went until I was exhausted. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe 1 hour, maybe 4. All I know is that when I finished, there was a pile of squirrels in the boat. Louis and the crew were laughing and cheering. All the rest of the day, the men were patting me and saying, good dog and good boy, and we'll be eating good tonight. The admiration of the crew was great, but the look of pride on Louis's face was better than all the men's praise added together. That night, the men fried the squirrels, and we ate well. In the 3 years that followed, I hunted almost every day, but the squirrels on the Ohio was my favorite. Observed a number of squirrels swimming the Ohio. They appeared to be making to the south. I made my dog take as many each day as I had occasion for. They were fat, and I thought them were fried a pleasant food. He would take the squirrel in the water, kill them, and swimming, bringing them in his mouth to the boat. Meriwether Lewis, September 11, 1803. Bear Dog, Indians. We had not been on the shore very long before I heard Louis say the word. Louis and Clark and I had crossed the river to make some observations. That's when these Indians appeared. They were different from other people I had known, the boatmen and city folk. I didn't sense that Louis or Clark were concerned, so I wasn't. The Indians seemed friendly enough. Louis talked to them. It wasn't until later that I realized Louis gave the same talk to every group of Indians we met. He talked about the Great White Father in Washington. The Indians listened patiently as one of the English-speaking Indians translated. Louis used his hand motions to help. As he talked on, it became obvious to me that the Indians were not interested in Louis or what he was saying. They were staring at me. Finally, Louis realized what was going on, and he invited the Indians to take a closer look. They gathered around. They touched me. They whispered about me. They acted like they had never seen a dog before. Then I noticed an Indian dog standing to the side. I took one look at that animal and realized why they were so interested in me. That dog could not be more than 20 pounds. Newfoundlands could weigh up to 150 pounds, and I'm a large Newfoundland. If that scrawny dog was the only dog they had seen, then I was a strange sight indeed. Bear, one of the English-speaking Indians said. I looked up. He was pointing at me. Dog, Louis replied patiently. The Indian looked at his own dog. He looked back at me. Bear, he said again. Louis looked at me and smiled. Clark was smiling too. I lifted my head. I guess he does look like a bear, Louis said. Louis picked up a stick and threw it. Fetch, he said. I fetched. Stay, he said. I stayed. Sit, he said. I sat. The Indians were impressed. Dog, Louis said politely. Louis was always nice. The Indian who had called me bear turned to consult with his friends. Finally, he turned. Bear dog, he said with satisfaction. Louis smiled. Yes, I guess you can call him a bear dog. Later, George Drulaw explained to us that the Indians don't have a separate word for horse. They call a horse elk dog. I guess it made sense for them to call me a bear dog. The Indian suddenly turned and walked through the crowd to his horse. He pulled out 3 beaver skins. He held them out to Louis. For Bear Dog, he said. It wasn't often that I saw Louis surprised. He was then. I took a step closer to Louis. Louis looked the Indian square in the eye and said, "No trade, Bear Dog special." As we rode back to camp in the boat, Louis said to me, 3 beaver skins? Can you believe that? No, I could not. The idea that Louis and I would ever separate was unthinkable. Not many dogs and men fit together like Louis and I. If you have ever experienced it, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, well, it's hard to explain. All I can tell you is that when a dog and a man fit like Louis and I did, nothing can separate them. Louis said it best, no trade. One of the Shawnees, a respectable looking Indian, offered me 3 beaver skins for my dog, with which he appeared much pleased. Of course, there was no bargain. I had given $20 for this dog myself. Meriwether Lewis, November 16, 1803. Journey of Lewis and Clark and Seaman. Number 1. Lewis pushes out onto the Ohio River on August 13, 1803. Number 2. Lewis and Clark expedition departs up the Missouri River from near St. Louis, May 14, 1804. Number 3. Sergeant Charles Floyd dies of illness, probably appendicitis, becoming the only casualty of the trip August 20th, 1804. Number 4. The expedition encounters the Sioux, August 1804. Number 5. The expedition spends the winter at Fort Madden and meets Sacagawea, October 1804 to 1805. Number 6. The expedition crosses the Continental Divide, August 12, 1805. Number 7. The expedition reaches the Pacific Ocean, November 12, 1805. And number 8. The expedition spends the winter at Clort Flats off December 1805 to March 1806. The end.